Talofa. My name is Aleki Sene. I was born in American Samoa, in the village of Utulei, the island of Utulei, in the year 1931. My early education started out in the parochial school, Whaiwheau school. In those days there were no public school system. From there on, when I was able to attend the brother school in Atu'u, I attended that school until the Second World War broke out, when the school closed down. After that, when the war ended, I went to Poya School, which I graduated in 1946. At that time, the naval administration who administered the island throughout that period was thinking of starting a high school. They recruited a couple from the United States, Mr. and Mrs. Maxina, and with 3 local Samoan teachers, namely Nicolau Pula, Aifili Lauvao, and Fiaui Mulitau Opele. They were the first of the 3 Samoan instructors for the high school. Point of interest is that here we have 3 founders of the high school that have never attended high school. Before you enter high school, there was a series of tests we have to go through. Not SAT, but just an elimination of tests to weed out the top students to go to high school, to attend high school at the freshman level. There were 13 of us that were selected to be freshmen. So back then in 1950 we graduated from high school. This is the first high school in American Samoa, still under Navy administration at the time. But after high school, there was no way to go other than staying home and do the mamanga. No. So Navy offered us sea transportation to go to the mainland. So there were 5 of us in this group that I was with. There were other groups, but there were 5 of us, namely Ofisa Kose, Valele Ale, Salapa'au, and Malala Tuiofu. All of us went to Reedley JC, which is a little town near Fresno in the San Joaquin Valley. It took us 30 days to travel from American Samoa to San Francisco. And by way of vessels, we went first to Kwajalein Island. Then from there, we took another boat ride to Hawaii, and then another boat ride to San Francisco. Total of 30 days for that trip. It was the only way to get to the West Coast to begin with. Yeah. So we were able to go to Reedley and attend school there. My major, to start out with, I planned to be a civil engineer. So I did the preliminary for the first 2 years. I was a civil engineering student. But after graduating from Reedley, Reedley is a junior college. After graduating from there, I went to San Francisco, went back to San Francisco and took up a job with the Bethlehem Steel Corporation as one of the tower fabrication rigger over there. So I spent 2 years there before I was drafted in the Army in 1954. At the same time, while I was in San Francisco, I took some courses in the San Francisco State College. So I went to the Army. My position in the Army, they transferred me to a school in the Army, and I took up a technician, being a radio technician at that time for 6 months. And when I came out of the Army 2 years later, I went back to San Francisco and took up a job with Pan American World Airways. At this time, I utilized what I learned in the Army. I was a technician for communications and navigation equipment for Pan American Airways aircrafts. While in San Francisco, in 1957, I met this very beautiful woman, Tino Malipeai. Yeah, that's finally her name. Yeah. And we started a family in 1957. At the same time, I was working full time. I applied for admission to the San Jose State College as an electrical engineering student. I was accepted, but unfortunately I couldn't go full-time because I was raising a family of 4 boys, namely Aleki Sene Jr., Sene, Barney Sene, and Denis Sene. So in 1965, that's right, Esther came along as part of the family. Yeah, Esther was born in 1965. Was the first and the only daughter of the family. So when I graduated from San Jose State College, I applied for a job in American Samoa at the time. I was immediately accepted to come to work in American Samoa. So we took the family back to Samoa, back in Samoa in the early part. Rather, I took the family back later in the year 1963 to Samoa. And my first job there was to set up international telephone circuits for the government to connect to the mainland, mainly to AT&T's facilities in Oakland. But prior to going to Samoa, I was working for AT&T for 6 months, setting up circuits, similar type of arrangements for international telephone circuits. So I was fortunate enough to gain that experience and use it. When I went to Samoa, I started setting up facilities to enable people to make phone calls to the United States and to the outside world. When I went to San Jose State, I changed my major. You know, when I was in Reedley, I decided to be a civil engineer. Being going to the Army for 2 years, they sent me to electronic schools. I changed my field to electrical engineering with communications options. So I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from San Jose State University. Yeah, when we went back to Samoa, we started building a house in the village of Auto. This is in the eastern, near Whangaitua. In 1950, the Navy, you know, the radio station in American Samoa, the first radio station, broadcasting station in American Samoa was set up by the Marines back in Happy Valley, Pango. Yeah, it was an old, very low-powered AM station for the troops. So while I was going to high school toward my last year, I was recruited to work in the radio station there, WBV, which is operated by the Navy at that time. The studio is up, located where the phono is, the old rec hall, which some of you may remember. That's where I did my first exposure to broadcasting. Then in those days, the only programs you play was the regular armed forces music. I went ahead without the approval of the chaplain who was in charge of the operation and pick up some Samoan musicians and have a live show on the broadcast station. I was later relieved because of that, but it was a very good experience to get the Samoan music on that radio station, which was basically all American music. And you may remember the guitar player, the steel guitar player, one of the famous one that played it in the famous hotel in San Francisco. His name was Pete Kaki. So that was my first exposure with broadcasting, which we later, for information, we later started the first FM broadcasting station in American Samoa, in the Samoan group for that matter, yeah. Which at present has about 10 broadcasting via FM stations. So it was difficult when we moved back to Samoa. We tried to build a house in Auto. There was no electricity, no telephone. It was very remote. The roads were miserable, full of potholes. But we managed to build a house there, and finally in the, I think the year 1965, we finally got electricity, and we still didn't have a phone until later. In fact, much later, and one of the reasons why I got a phone, one of the first telephone to be installed in the Eastern District, was because I took over the phone operation from Public Works. Governor Hayden got so irritated with the lack of progress in those days of stringing telephones. The telephone service was only available in the Bay Area and only few in the Tafuna Plains. So Hayden, which was the governor that replaced Rex Lee, transferred the operation of the local telephone system from Public Works to then the Office of Communications. In those days, I reported directly to the governor. When I came to Samoa, I took over a job as an assistant communications officer in those days. So I took over that job, and when my predecessor left and took over that job in 1960, latter part of 63 until 1967, Lee was replaced by Governor Owen Espinal. He was Rex Lee's lieutenant governor at that time. Well, during that time, Rex Lee came to Samoa to build the island infrastructure mainly. But Rex Lee at that time, it's one of the reasons why I was also hired not only to work with the communications office to set up long-distance overseas telephone service, was also to support some of the operations of the educational TV project that Governor Lee instituted as a pilot program to educate people via television. This was called the Educational Television System. Perhaps one of the first one in the United States to do this. It was mostly an experiment, but it did some good by building the infrastructure in American Samoa, because even during that time, Rex Lee was hosting the fifth South Pacific Commission meeting there, would stir up most of the constructions in American Samoa. All the buildings, it also was the time when the airport, which was started by Governor Coleman, and Lee finished it in 1962. And even the Laumei, which the building is called Rex Lee's building now, the auditorium now, was one of the, and at the same time Lee was also instrumental in building the terminal facilities. Also, as a side note, was very interesting because Rex Lee was the only governor who was able to bring down a sitting president of the United States. That was President Lyndon B. Johnson. That came down and dedicate some of the schools, the public schools in American Samoa. And one of the schools is also named under President Johnson's Lady Bird Elementary School. Lady Bird Elementary School. And at the same time, I think it was groundbreaking for the LBJ hospital. Came down during that period to start that project. Let's see. Lee was a very aggressive governor, very determined to accomplish what he was aimed to do. As a result, he was able to turn up this ETV system with 3 10-kilowatt transmitters on Mount Alava, broadcasting out to all the schools in Tutuila and Manua. At the same time, to be able to gain access to the facilities up in Mount Alava, the transmitting stations, he was able to build the tramway between the point in Utulei all the way up to the Mount Alava where the tramway ended. It's unfortunate that the tramway is no longer in service. It's been commissioned together with the Intercontinental Hotel. So, when I went back down to Samoa, I was under the impression the FAA was doing air-to-ground communications, and at the same time I thought there was a weather station down there. And all of these functions were performed by the Office of Communications. I was directly involved with directing air traffic control, aircrafts coming into the airport, and also do weather observations and weather forecasting. So these were functions that were later turned over to the Federal Aviation Administration and also the Weather Bureau, the weather station, which is what, NOAA right now?
NOAA.
To NOAA. So, but in those days we were doing all of these functions under the auspices of the Office of Communications. We're doing also ship-to-shore communications, one of the only coastal stations around that area doing that. So it was a very aggressive move, and this was all under, at this time now the administration was turned over to the Department of Interior. From the Navy we, the radio station, all the radio functions, radio telegrams, which were handled by the Navy, were turned over to the Office of Communication under the Governor's Office in those days. As a matter of fact, the Governor's Office and the Communications Office were housed in the same place. That's the courthouse right now. Yeah. We were there until the latter part of 1960 when we moved to our new location in Whangatongo. At the same time, WVV, when the Navy left there, they turned over the stations to the local government, Department of Interior, where part of my responsibility is to look after that stations, maintaining the station. It was operated by the Department of Education, but we maintained the station in terms of technical support. And was later turned over to the Office of Information. And at one point we were able to secure a 10,000 watt transmitter and install it in Taputimu, where the range of that station was reaching New Zealand and up to Hawaii at nighttime. One of the most powerful stations in the South Pacific during that time. It was also a dual function of that station, was used as a automatic direction finder, this ADF using by aircrafts to home into Pango Airport, which is Tafuna Airport. It's Pango International Airport, so they call it. When Governor Lee left there, I guess Governor Lee left Samoa back in 1960, was it
1967.
Middle of 67, mid 67. Yeah, end of July, and then Wayne Aspinall became governor. I think no more than 30 days after he took office, he appointed me. My predecessor at that point, when Lee left, my predecessor left about 6 months earlier. I was acting in the acting capacity for about 6 months. When Aspinall became governor, he appointed me as the chief of the Office of Communications during that time. I served under Aspinall until Governor Hayden replaced Aspinall back in 1960, was that 69?
Yeah, end of 60. Yeah.
End of 69? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to recollect this. This is from memory. As you get, you can judge. For an 81-year-old, the memory banks are not there. They begin to fade away. So when Hayden came down, he was also a very aggressive governor. Hayden, he immediately went to work with. In the telephone arena, he complained about me not having a telephone. We still have time on. And what he did to solve that problem, he transferred the telephone company from Public Works to the Office of Communication. We're still under the Governor's Office, so we took over the operation of the local telephone system in 1971. Governor Hayden did that. It was only less than 3 months after that appointment that I was able to get a telephone at home. That was a relief. Prior to that time, I was using my ham radio for communications and also my VHF radios to communicate with the office. It was all radio. Incidentally, by using the ham radio, I was able to assist in a lot of emergencies during hours when the commercial telephone service is down. And in those days, we only operate the telephone, the overseas telephone service for 8 hours, Monday through Fridays. And on weekends, we only operate from 8 o'clock to 12 noon on Saturdays and Sundays. So if an emergency occurs around after those hours, or they come to my house, and I was able to make contact through my ham radio. That was the other fortunate part of, in those days, that was the only way I can communicate back to the mainland and to the world for that matter on my ham radio. So, but when Hayden transferred to us, the phone service was only to the Loloa in the Bay Area, up to the Loloa, Whakatongo, Utulei, and that's about it. There was nothing in Whakaalo beyond that point. Then in Tafuna, it's only in the Tafuna area. So immediately we started expanding the local phone service. Then we started installing what they call an electrical mechanical switch. It was, they call in those days an XY switch by the firm Stromberg Carson, which was owned by General Dynamics, and finally it went through a lot of transformation, owners and so forth. Those are the things that, for history of the telephone system. But we managed to extend the local telephone system to all of Tutuila. We put up a new exchange in Whangaitua, another one in Leone, and get service to all of the people in the main island of Tutuila. And prior to Hayden leaving the territory, I was almost to the verge of completing a telephone exchange in Ta'u. So that's one of his last wishes to me, is to be able to do this during the time I'm still in charge of the operation. So we managed to get telephone system in Ta'u back in 1975, I think. Is at the time. Yeah, in 1975 we managed to get phone service to Ta'u. While we're doing all of this, this is in the 70s, we were looking at other ways of extending our reach out to the world. And at the time, satellite communications begin to emerge as a mode of communications for long distance. What we did in the early years was to use HF, what they call the high frequency radios, HF radios. Now we're planning to move into satellite communications. One of the things that, to me, that Governor Hayden did was to establish a retirement system for government employees. This was done in 1971, and what he did was to appoint a governing trustees, board of trustees, and at the time when he established this, there were 4 of us who were appointed as trustees of the fund. So in 1971, through an appropriation of $300,000, local appropriation of $300,000, Governor Hayden decided to start a retirement system for the employees of the American Samoa government. He came to me and asked me whether I'm interested in serving as one of the trustees, the founding trustees of the fund. Of course, I accepted the appointment immediately, and I became a member of the fund I became one of the trustees, 4 trustees of the fund. The members of trustees at the original trustees were Mr. Ferd Early, Otto Halleck, Ben Newble, and myself, the 4 of us. The chairman then was the director of human resources. It was under the government's, it was function under the government. It later became independent from the government, but during those days was the director of human resources acted as the chairman of the retirement board. The treasurer of the government also was the treasurer of the fund. And this fund, fortunately, if you look back in the records, it started from $300,000, and as of today, it has assets of over $200 million. It has about, right now, approximately 6,500 members, 1,500 retirees, and there's roughly 4,500 active members. In the 70s, you can call it a year where a real, very rapid transformation of the local telephone system. The long distance was previously, we operated there previously, but in the 70s, when Governor Hayden transferred the operation of the local telephone system to me, my assignment was to speed up the deployment of local telephone service to the island. And before he left the island, we had all the island covered with telephone service, the island of Utulei. The remaining islands of the Manua was one of the things that he asked me that we promised. He said in his final note to me that to remember that we promised the people of Manua we're going to have telephone service like similar to what the Utulei residents are enjoying. So this is one of the things that we did in a year after Hayden left the office back in 1975 when we had telephone service to Manua. And it was interesting to note that when Rex Lee was putting up the TV system, there was no way to communicate with all the schools. So our other function was to establish a elaborate VHF, this is very high frequency radio system, to coordinate movements and coordinate school activities. So that's other responsibility we were taking at the time, was to support the ETV project through setting up communications links to all the schools. And for that matter, also communication links for all the public works facilities, since there were no landlines to connect to. Hayden left, then Governor Barney took over. Mockler took over after that. And finally, Roof came over. It's one of my other governors I dealt with, Governor Earl Roof. He has his own approach. First thing he did, he fired all the Samoans. He transferred. When he came to me, he was ready. And this is funny, but this is the truth. He came to me and he brought in another Palangi to take over my job. And he came to me and he said, well, I got this gentleman to kind of watch your operation. And I asked him, is he going to work for me or is I'm going to work for him? The guy said, no, you work together, but you report to him. This is the way. It was funny to report to him. And then I asked, well, how much money is he getting more higher paid than I am? So, and then the guy said, yeah, well, he has a little bit more. This is the job. Yeah. And I said, Governor, with all due respect, here's my philosophy. It's very simple. If I'm in charge, I should be paid more than him. Yeah. So, but if he's in charge, then call me off. I'm not gonna. So Roof kept me. He said, "No, you stay there." And then he gave me an increase, which was good. I mean, to me, that was a blessing in disguise to have this guy. But when Roof left the island, it's not a popular governor, so to speak. Yeah. One of his final words to me is, Aleki, you're the only friend I have on this island. which was, I thought it was very funny. The guy was very ruthless. I guess that's why you call him Roof. You don't want to put this public information. But it's, anyway, so Rex Lee was reappointed to come back and start the transition to elected officials, elected governor. So I was able to serve Lee during that time. Incidentally, I went through all of these governors uninterrupted. It was a continuous process. Maybe later on you can outline there. It's a challenge. Try to meet. They have different personalities. Some are very pleasant. Some are not too pleasant. But they were there. And my mission was I'm determined to do what I'm supposed to be doing, get paid for. So when Coleman got elected, one of his first trip to outside of American Samoa was to Washington, D.C. And he invited me to go to Washington, D.C. with him. The main reason why we went to Washington, D.C. was to get permission from the Interior Department to establish a satellite earth stations in American Samoa in Papago. to supplement the HF communications and try to converge and try to transition to satellite communications. It's more reliable than the HF systems that we were depending on for all these years. So we went to our first meeting in Washington, D.C. This is another interesting part about this meeting. When we make the proposal to the Deputy Director of Interior at the time, she was a lady. She was very surrounded by a lot of legal person. She was very reluctant to accept our proposal, and it was getting to the point that we saw it was a dead end. It was almost like a rejection of our proposal to establish a satellite station in American Samoa. So after a while, after serious discussions, I saw we're not moving in any direction, positive directions. So I spoke to Governor Coleman, sitting across from me. I just kneel over and talked to Coleman in Samoan. That's its exact one. So Coleman didn't just laugh and nod to me. He didn't say nod to me. Then I turned over to the Deputy Director of the Interior at that time. I just told her, it appears like you people are supporting our proposal, our ideas of improving our telecommunications in American Samoa. So if you fail to give us approval, permission to do this, we intend to go to Western Samoa and negotiate the site to build the earth station in Western Samoa to serve us. Immediately after I threatened to do that, the tone changed completely. Yeah, they see it's not going to go. In Western Samoa is an independent nation, and here we are. We're trying to go there and build a station for. Yeah, so that was the end of that discussion. We came back, and a few years later, we were able to establish the satellite communications in Tafuna. It was one of ComSat did the project. They built the earth station and manned the earth station. In October 27, 1979, we inaugurated the earth station, dedicated, and was on the air with television shows. It was a monumental accomplishment by Coleman in getting that satellite stations in.
It was a game changer too.
It was a game changer because we moved from one technology to the other, and it immediately improved the livelihood. People were able to right after once. We had limited, all this time we had limited hours of operation when we were, prior to the satellite communications coming in, we had very limited hours. We don't operate 24 hours a day. When we inaugurated the satellite service, we immediately went to 24-hour operation. So it was a drastic change, and you can call any place 24 hours a day. But even after we inaugurated the satellite service, and we're not able, we still had to go through an operator in those days. We were at the transformation of trying to move from electrical mechanical switch to electronics digital. Yeah. So I think Coleman in the one of the inaugurations of another technology change when we moved from electrical mechanical switch to digital switch, he was the first call that made out of American Samoa. He was able to dial directly the Secretary of Interior. After that, he was connecting to the President of American Telephone and Telegraph Company. Those days, AT&T was still AT&T. It wasn't broken up in pieces. seven regional. Yeah. So
this was in 1981.
1981. Yeah.
1981.
Yeah. 1980.
The first direct dial phone.
Yeah. First, Coleman was the first one to punch digits, be able to talk to a person, connect to a telephone.
Without an operator.
Without an operator intervention. So it's something that we've been looking forward to for years. It's a culmination of doing work to go to that that level, you know.
And you'd already set up all the
Try
infrastructure
to,
locally.
try to eliminate involvement of people in the process. So, yeah, Coleman was very pleased to be the first one to do that. So, and it was funny too, right? Another interesting part about it, if you look back in the evolution of a technology, fax machine, if you see fax machines now, you can practically put one in your suitcase and walk with you. Huh? In those days, a fax machine was a big box, real huge box. And right after we do this, we're able to install a fax machine in Coleman's office. He was able to fax message to the Interior Department. Yeah, instead of waiting for mail to come in and mail it. It's another real handy piece of equipment. It's interesting. At that time, fax machine was was unheard of. It's just coming out, and to do what we did is we bought the fax machine. This office communication bought a fax machine for Coleman to use, and we bought one for the Interior to use. That's how poor those guys didn't do. Well, they didn't believe we can do this, so we bought them a fax machine. We gave it to them. So Coleman was very happy about that. Yeah, it's different now. You get your laptop and get your iPad or whatever it is. You can do anything. You don't need to have a fax machine. It's the evolution of technology. What I'm beginning to say, it's people nowadays are taking it for granted, these things. But if you look back, if you live through that period, you appreciate going through that period. Yeah, I remember going to college. This is the sideline. Go to college. There were no computers during that time. Whatever, we had a so-called mainframe. I don't know, but you have to insert punch cards to run through it to make solve a deflection in beams or something like that. Yeah, calculators unheard of. In fact, in my early days of going to be a civil engineer, we used side rule to do our calculations and surveying. A piece of stick there too. Some of them haven't seen the slide rule. These are the things of when we would become an engineer. This is your tool. This is your calculator. This is your laptop. Nowadays you don't know, but it's two sticks that you can pull back and forth, giving you angles and sines, cosine, tangents, and all of that. But then if you look back, this is a good note for kids right now. You'll be amazed to find that I would say 90% of the kids cannot add numbers mentally without a calculator. They just have to have a calculator. Those days your calculator's in your brain, and you do all of that. And there's no, other than the slide rule, I think that's the only tool you have. It's but it's life.
It's life.
Coleman left. We're going now to the 80s. The next technology coming around the corner in those days was the cell phone, the cellular phone. In those days there were two. When you get a license to operate a cell cellular system, there are two. Either your wireline, which is the local company that does the wireline connection, or you are a non-wireline. So that's your competitor, it's a non-wireline. Yeah, it's no longer the case anymore, but those days. So being a wireline, we were able to get a license to put up a cellular system. Yeah, it was very strange because it was when I was going to get a license from Interior to operate cellular. The gentleman that I worked with was it's a good friend of mine. He was very receptive to our ideas, even going through trying to get licenses to operate the microwave systems, dense microwave in those days. He was very helpful to give us license. He immediately gave us license. Unfortunately, the other group that is monitoring the operation, the Inspector General of the idea, they didn't agree with that philosophy, and they tried to buck me when I was trying to put up a cellular system. Having a license back in 1986, I immediately went to look for a system, an analog system to put up. The IG inspector went to Governor Utulei, tried to block my transition to the next generation, the next technology. He tried to block that, saying the island is too small, it cannot support this type of infrastructure build out. The residents don't need it, which to me was an insult. To my intelligence, somebody's telling me that you're not supposed to enjoy this new evolution coming down the road. So I went to Utulei, and Utulei just told me, you just ignore him, go do your stuff. So in 1986, when we hosted the first the South Pacific Telecom meeting in Pango, we unveiled our cellular system at that time. If you see back in those days, to have a cellular telephone, you have to carry a box, what they call a lunch box. It was nothing like you can put in your pocket. They don't exist during those days. This huge box that you carry around, that's your cellular telephone. But the flexibility is that you can take that any place, which was one of the driving forces of mobility. Because of mobility, the cellular business, the wireless business, became the main business in communications. You can see nowadays, the wireline has shifted. The emphasis of wireline shifted to the wireless, the cellular. So we went ahead and installed one of the first in that part of the Pacific. In fact, when we turned up our cellular system, Honolulu was just turned up their cellular system not even a year before. New Zealand was working on putting up their first cellular system, Australia, and so forth. And we brought it up. It's the infancy of the technology. We brought it up. Of course, we went through a lot of transitions. This is the old one, then we went through 1G, 2G, 3Gs. Now we're working on 4Gs. But it's just why are so? Sometimes I look back and say, why are these people against our move to improve things by trying to block us? It was one of the disappointment I got was from the satellite, when people didn't want us to build satellite facilities, to the cellular that people. But fortunately, they were never successful in blocking all those efforts that we did. And our main emphasis was to provide service to people at an affordable price. And that's our move. So that was Utulei's age. Utulei also, we had some dealings with Utulei on the other area of the retirement system. Because if I look back, the history of this is back now, Utulei, this is what year is this? We're back to 1987.
This all in the 80s.
Yeah, in the mid-80s, Mid-80s, Utulei did something that was illegal. I mean, I told Utulei it's illegal. I was threatening to take him to court. When Hayden established the retirement system, there was some provision in the law. One of the provisions in the law is that for the board of trustees, they're the people that sets the contribution rates for the government to contribute to the system. So Utulei, rather than trying to balance getting extra money from Interior or any ways, any other means of getting extra money, he went ahead and reduced the government contribution. It's balancing the equation. It's either income or outgo expense. So what he did is the retirement contribution, the government contribution at that time was roughly 15%. He went ahead and cut it down to about 5 or 6%. It's a drastic cut without the approval of the board. It's important, the background of what Utulei did. So when the board members knew about this, they were ready to resign. Everybody was ready to resign, actually. They're giving me their resignation to resign. I was then the chairman of the board. After, but so we met with Utulei, and Utulei, I told Utulei that his action was illegal and to roll back the contribution rate to come back to 15%. So after hearing what I said to Utulei turned to his legal counsel and accused the legal counsel, which is Steve Watson. so you got Steve Watson there. Actually, when we went out of the office, Steve would say, Governor wasn't telling the truth. It was him. Because I threatened Utulei. I said, Utulei, you did something illegal. Our next option was to take you to court.
Yeah.
The objective of this fund is for us to be independent from the government. At this time, we were not independent yet. We're still partially controlled by the government. So one of the best things that Utulei told me, well, we made an error here, but I want you to go back and rewrite the law to separate, strengthen the role of the retirement fund, move it away from the government control. So that was the best thing that happened to this fund. It was the only way that the reason why this fund still exists today and it's successful. Is when we went back, rewrite the law, we separated totally from the government and do away with any government control. We leave the human resources participation, the director, and also the treasurer. We removed the treasurer. And in doing so, we did something very unusual. This is something that also I always proud of mentioning to other people, other pension funds. We did something and we put it in law without anybody questioning that if the governor, if the governor participates in some agreement with the FONO to rate the fund, and that becomes law, that law and the Board of Trustees objected to that law is null and void. Even if the governor signed that into law. It hasn't been tested yet, because it hasn't, but it was a good provision. It's always come up in our discussions that if you do something without the trustees approving it through we need to go through an actuarial review, study actuarial review. That piece of legislation, especially deals with taking money away from the fund. And that's the reason why the fund is successful, because of that provision. And I give Utulei credit for that. What was the nicest part about that too is the fact that right after Utulei told me to rewrite it, I hired a lawyer that was familiar with pension plans. And the only thing I put in there was ask him for additional protection. This is what he suggested, so we put it in the law. Nobody questions in the phone. They just review it and pass it. So it became law and was signed by Utulei. That's the law that we operated on today up to now. ComSat station was operational back in October 27, 1979. 10 years later, ComSat had a business decision to do away with all their earth stations in the Pacific. So they want to put the station out. They want to sell the station. So the station was put out for bid, and only two companies bid on this one. The Hawaiian Telephone Company at that time wanted to operate buy the satellite station, and Samoan Technologies. Samoan Technologies, incidentally, at that time was already had a license to operate mobile radios. They had paging service, and they had the first FM broadcasting. They were familiar with all the licensing procedures with the FCC. So the FCC immediately granted Samoan Technologies license to operate the satellite earth station in Tafuna. So ComSat sold the station to Samoan Technologies. At that time, the station only had one antenna, just a small antenna, which is roughly between a 9 and 11 meter antenna, which was classified as a B station. Samoan Technologies went in and started upgrading the station. What they did during that time was one of the other reasons why ComSat wants to do away with all their stations is there was a requirement to go dual pole on all of these satellite earth stations. It was a very costly proposition for them, and so they decided to do away with sell it. Some more technologies move in and start going into this modification, and it had it was very costly modification at the time for the original station. But after that was done, Samoan Technologies went in and installed a bigger station. And one of the reasons why Samoan Technologies did that was the fact that when you have a bigger antenna like an A station, your rates are lower. And by having a lower rates, this rate also can be funneled down to the consumers. Consumers will have a break. The smaller dish costs very expensive for a capacity. So Samoan Technologies built an A station in 14-meter antenna, which is still operational right now. And then at that time, 15 years later, the old station, Samoan Technologies, took that down and replaced it with a new station. So at the moment, we have two stations that are operating by Samoan Technologies: the B station, which was then the original B station by Comsat, and the A station. They're both working now simultaneously. For one reason, one will be backing up the other one. If there's a failure on one satellite, they can always use the other station. It was a redundancy for the system, and this is what Samoan Technologies did, and we're still using that service right now, supplementing the ash cable. There's in the mid 80s, it was in the news, very common in the news. The Russians were accused of trying to smuggle a VAX. Was that 685 or 785, whatever this year? There was a VAX. The Russians wanted to smuggle it from, I think, from Finland to used to launch their rockets. It was very strange because we're having the same model that the Russians were trying to smuggle. We were using a VAX computer at the time, a mainframe. Yeah, we're instrumental in getting introducing that in American Samoa. When people came down for the 1986 South Pacific Games, I showed them the VAX operation, and they were kind of stunned. I was joking about it, but this is the same equipment that the Russians trying to smuggle. So that's how advanced this computer was. It's a mainframe, but now it's replaced by an iPad.
Technology shrunk.
Technology really shrunk that. This is the 90s, huh? Yeah, that decade is it's a very interesting decade because one of the things that was worldwide, has a worldwide implication, was also the white preparation for the Y2K. That was one of the other funny part about that. It was not funny, but if you look back, but at that time we were then trying to transition to the next generation of switches. Also, by doing that, we're looking at what is going to happen in this Y2K transition. We're preparing for it basically during that time. And also, in the 90s, we're more or less forced out of the business. The federal government is trying to force us out of the telecom business. And they asked, we had the monopoly all this time. Being the carriers, the common carrier in American Samoa, and government operated, they didn't like the idea that the government is operating something of this nature in American Samoa. So what we did is we more or less privatized it by having it created as an authority. This became effective in 1998 when Tauese made that transformation, moving us from government control directly to a board control. We have a board of this board of directors operating as a semi-autonomous operation of the government of American Samoa. At the same time, they're pulling us out of the interior. We were getting all our licenses with the interior. They're running at us to get licenses from the FCC. Now we're under FCC control. And part of the reasons when the FCC was always coming up with this idea of fostering competition, and that's why they want to open it up. And we started preparing for that. And also at this time, we were all international. When we did this, FCC wants us to come to the domestic numbering system. Remember, we still have our country code 684. they were a country code. Yeah. When we became authority in '98, this is a result of it. We made the transition back in have area codes. 684 becomes our area code, not a country code. And we've come under the North American numbering plan, which is the country code number 1. So that's the other thing that happened in the 90s. Then when we went through the Y2K was funny, in a sense. I don't know if you want to publicize it, but it's one of these things that you always laugh at it. Yeah, because we bought some switches from Nortel, DMS 100. Some of the people in the industry, they're familiar with this switch. In order to pass through this Y2K thing that they're worrying about, we had to pay in an upgrade of over $1 million, almost close to $2 million, just to do this upgrade to pass or roll over from 1999 to 2000, year 2000, which is very expensive. So what we did, we went and bought another switch we just bought another switch for $800,000 rather than spending over $1 million plus $1.6 million to upgrade the switch. So we did that. And what we did, we didn't shut down the DMS 100. We let it roll by itself in, just to find out whether these guys are really true that everything will fail in Y2K. You know what happened? That switch worked throughout the period. You know, and it was bad in a way. It was more or less a fraud. I call that Y2K. It's a purposely introduced fraud in the industry. You know, and people, when they were designing all of these things, I don't know why they think that they don't roll over to the next century. Yeah, but I always tell it to people just to make them feel. I said, we had a switch that we didn't even do anything to it, and they roll over to January, and just rather than spending that, we finally disposed of that switch, but it's funny part of it.
Pretty fraud.
Yeah, it's fun, you know. And if you can see also, if you look back to the history, right after the Y2K, all these companies that were manufacturing switches and all of that become to go down. Yeah. Nortel is a typical example. Nortel is no longer. I mean, the name disappears already. Yeah. So, and they made their money during that period. Oh, that was a century with the decade where they made the most. They were selling all kinds of switches to prepare for this one, which, yeah, to me was
fraudulent.
Yeah, they know that. EOB was during the Utulei administration. Yeah, it was earlier than the 90s actually. It was in the Utulei administration where Utulei, they wanted to build an executive building. What was happening during that time is they were reviewing the government financial statement, the financial strength of the government and all of that. They didn't feel like we can float a bond with that type of financial backing from the government. So they turned to communications and run their profit and loss statement, their financial statement. They told me it's more easier to float a bond with that backing. So we float a bond. We wound up paying for all of that building, nearly all of the building. Port administration helped us a little bit, some percentage of funding for that. They allocated some funds. But the basic funds for building that EOB was strictly out of communication. That was our first so-called assistance or loan to communications, to the government. The real one that was documented. Prior to that, they were stealing money from us anyway. They were using all our whatever surplus we have every year. You know, Congressman Faleo Mabayanga noticed that, and he noted that because he was lieutenant governor during Lutulei's administration, and he saw this happen. He saw this, and that's why he reminded people that we've been paying debts for the government ever since he knew us. We established the Office of Communication. Well, it was funny that he made that remark during our dedication of our building, but it's a fact. Yeah. And we paid that loan, and right after that, now we pay another loan. The government needs money for the hospital, so they borrow another $10 million. We paid that, and that's what we're currently paying. So we've been doing this for the government. In addition to, we try to lower our rates to the most affordable that they can keep. I always believe in people. you give them something. If they can afford, they'll buy it. If they can't afford, they won't gonna buy it. So, people may have a misconception that we're getting some money from the federal government or the federal agency. We have never received a penny from the federal government to operate communications. From the very beginning, all our infrastructure built out were all from our local revenues, from all our ratepayers. And that's why I kept saying, and I thank the ratepayers, even when we dedicate our building last month. Without the ratepayers, we wouldn't be seeing a structure like this. We built one of the first 4-story building in American Samoa. We just dedicated that last month. Well, instead of receiving local funds, we gave them money. So
you don't receive money from the general fund.
Yeah, no, we don't receive. We don't go into their CIP budgets. We never go out and ask Interior for money. We're able to sustain our own 2 feet, so to speak. Yeah, it's something that I'm very proud of, that we're able to do that. And I always believe if you manage your resources frugally and prudently, and perhaps you can still accomplish what you aim to accomplish.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s. Our main thrust then was try to put most of our infrastructure, our cabling underground. Yeah. The basic reason for doing that is every time we get hit by a hurricane, we have to replace all our outside plant. And by going underground, we can spare the cost of that. FEMA generously help us recover from disasters like hurricane disasters by assisting us rebuild the infrastructure. But in the 2000s, we decided to, actually earlier than that, we decided to go underground, and we're doing that every year. We put in money to go underground if we can possibly do it. It's an insurance for hurricane damages. So. And at the same time, we're making transition to the next generation. This is very funny not funny, but it's unique and also very costly too. In the old days, when you buy a switch, when I say old days, in the 70s, in the 80s, even in the 60s, you expect that switch to last you. The technology should last you 20 to 30 years. Nowadays, when you buy a switch, you're lucky if you have 5 years. That technology changes so fast, and it's hard on the telecom people to keep up with that. It's a very costly. The movement from generation to generation, and so that's what we did in the 2000s. Was go back and start replacing all our so-called switches that were supposed to last 30 years. Now they only lasted 10 years or less. So that's what we did. Moving to now they're all soft switches. We're trying to get into that area. At the same time, we've been improving, upgrading our cellular operation from the analog to digital. Try to get into. At the end of the 2000s, we're able to get into the 3G level. Yeah. We're working now. Yeah, presently we're working to bring our switches and the cellular to 4th generation switches. We applied for a small grant for the community center in Ofu. That's the first application we made, particularly to get a grant to have higher bandwidth, to build a community center to set up computers to connect people to the internet, serving a community so that the old folks and the community can go and use this service free of charge, of course. And we provided, this is the Ofu Community Center. We provided almost a T1 connection for internet, and then we set up about 12 computers so that the people can enjoy this. It's available 24 hours in Ofu. This is in Ofu only, one nicest place that you can go to. We say all travel to Ofu, nicest beach, very quiet, but it's still a very effective way of giving the old folks, people, access to internet, the outside. It's quite a feeling when you go there and you see these old folks in the 70s, close to the 80s, old man wearing level 11, all their slippers, they go in there and start with their 2 fingers and poke the computer and try to surf the web. Also try to get their email. At that, it's a satisfaction. To me, it's great satisfaction to see the old folks try to enjoy what the young generation is taking for granted. These are things. So the Ofu Community Center, when they gave us this grant, they also gave us money to operate this for 5 years. 5 years is running out in another 2 years or so, or a year. So, but it's a good way of getting the old folks, the people, to gain access to the modern technologies. You'd be thrilled when you see these old folks walking in there. Some of them are guided by their guns. And the other funny part about it, and instead of the old folks teaching the young generation something, these kids are teaching their grandmas, their grandpas how to use the computer. It's a reverse of the normal. So you find that in Ofu. That's the only grant that we were able to secure. It was a competitive grant too. We bid on it, and we one of the few that gained funding for that. Well, we have teleconferencing with high definition video, and you can see the kids can talk back to Pango and on high def. That was used during our dedication of our building. In the Tafuna, our building, we had a VTC up in the 4th floor. And when Governor Tongiola came in and watched it, we were greeting the kids. We were greeted by the kids over there, congratulating us for the opening of the kids. And then Chief Justice Cruiser went in there, and then he asked me, "Where are these kids at?" I told him they're in Ofu. So we kind of surprised that these are the kids in Ofu, the community center, which is, it's a very good application of new technology. So in the 2009, we went into this blast. Obama was kind enough to start in order to, reinvent the ARRA funding. And under that act, RUS, which is the Rural Utility Services, under the Department of Agriculture, on a competitive basis, we bid on the last mile part of that ARRA funding, and it was very competitive. We were able to submit a proposal for last mile. What we did with this last mile is actually a conversion of the present copper facilities, copper infrastructure, to fiber optics cable. So this is what they call the last mile. And we were able to secure funds also to make the connection between Tutuila and Manua via submarine cable using in that same grant. The grant totals $91 million. We're able to get that on competitive. In fact, if I look back, we're about either the 3rd or the 4th largest one. There were some bigger grants, but in their grants, was part grant and part loan. Our consultant, when we were preparing this, wanted us to make it an even split. They try to get a grant for 50% and then come up with a matching or a loan of 50%. I convinced them we can't afford that. The only way we can afford that is to go ask for a 90-10. So what we finally got after several months of exchanging information, all of that, they granted us an $81 million grant and then a $10 million loan. So that's what we call the blast. It's a broadband linking American Samoa territories. Hopefully this will improve the chances of companies coming in and build improve the economy overall in the island. One of the reasons behind this is to stimulate the economy. The final note is, before I came up, we just dedicated the first 4-story building in American Samoa. Yeah, the first one and the only one right now. So it was funny because if you look back in the history of how we designed it, how we came up. The building was actually conceived because of the need to have a landing station for that Project Spin that I referred to. It was defunct, it didn't go by the French. This was started in 2007. When we started thinking about building the landing station in Tofuna, at the airport area. So we got an acre there to build this. But as we go through the process of trying to build this little station, we thought, we might be able to include some of other requirements, like some offices. And by the time we finish, we already have enough space for a 3-story building to build. So we went out for bid and tried to build a 3-story building. And in the middle of construction, as you know, these guys came down and said they overbuilt the foundation and we can go another 2 or 3 stories, but we don't have the funds when we're doing this. So we managed to get a 4th floor and by the time, so we just dedicated that building last month. And Governor Tulafono was there, and Togiola was very glad because he accepted the philosophy of changing the design from an old traditional design, building design, to this one. It's modern style and gives us a new look. He saw this as the trend of the future. So Governor Tugiola was very appreciative of this design, and I gave him credit for that. Yeah, because when I went and it was also funny because he didn't know about what we're doing. Sometimes he scolds me because I don't give him a heads up on what's coming on the horizon. So it's only when it's ready. I always believe I don't want to get people all excited about something. Then if it doesn't materialize, then I'm in bad shape. I always try to see when something is ready to. I have good assurance that it's going to be done. Then I go 3 days before we groundbreak that facility, that building. I went and saw him, invited him for a groundbreaking ceremony. I gave him a picture of what the building is going to look like. This is a 3 stories, and he looked at it and he almost fell off his seat. But he rolled back and said, I've been waiting for somebody to give me this type of design. So we built it. But we just dedicate that building. The governor was there, Chief Justice was there, Representative, our Congress representative, Congressman Founder Barney. He's also going to occupy my 3rd floor since I moved up to the 4th floor. So he's going to enjoy a new facility. So that's what we just recently completed. So, and in the retirement, I think this is the culmination of everything that I do. I serve the government for right now continuously for almost 50 years. Continuous. I didn't take a break. I was tempted to take a break almost 20 years ago, but I thought I could stay on. So for nearly 50 years, I serve in numerous boards in government. Nearly every part of government I serve in an advisory capacity in boards. But but the retirement board is the only one that I retain. I just do away with all those boards. I just don't want, this is the only one that I retain, and I do it for one particular reason. I cherish this because this board, this retirement system of the government is a lifeline for the people, the old folks, the old people that serve the government and go out and have something in return for their service and for their later years. They can enjoy an additional income. Some of them are eligible for Social Security, but this is one of them. And that's why I call this a culmination of everything that I did in government. And I maintain this posture because in this board where I serve now as the chairman, I've been the chairman ever since we became independent from the government. The director of human resources used to be the chairman. When we move away from the government and have that independence, they elected me as the first chairman, and they haven't done another re-election process. Every time we ask them, let's go through election, they just So I continually serve as the chairman of the board up to the present time. And the board, and we have new people in the system. The old folks that started the system, they all passed away, and I'm the only one remaining there, and I intend to stay there as long as I can, just to safeguard, make sure that this fund is. The board is not compensated. They're not getting paid for their job. Yeah, they serve this without compensation. It's one of the nicest part about it. It was brought up that we should be compensated. You know, I turned them down. I said, when we do that type of approach, we now go to the instance where people want to meet because, you know, most of the boards, they meet because they're compensated for it. You know, I don't want these guys to think that I'm true. But the basic reason some other boards exist is to go and meet and get paid for meeting. Every time you meet, you get paid for. My board started to think that way, and I said, there's no way I'm going to accept that. So we serve no compensation. That's basically it. At the present time, we have 1,500 retirees enjoying a annual payroll to our trustees of roughly $18 million. So that's money, and I'm sure most of the people that are watching this tonight or here tonight, you know, are also recipients of funds from the retirement fund. Retirement fund now stands at roughly $200 million, starting out, as I said back then, $300,000. So as long as I'm able to function, I'll remain with this fund, and I hope whoever is going to come and replace us in the future will maintain this fund for the real purpose why it was established, is to help the people after they retired from government service. And I thank all the participants of the fund. And also I thank people that are here tonight. Most of them are not retirees, but you can always come back and work in Samoa and get retired. If you're military 5 years, you're ready to retire, get a portion of it. but it's also now, in order to make a big mark or something that's noticeable, you almost have to do the impossible. You know, the things are getting more difficult. You know, you're not in the early generation coming. You're in the mature area. Right. So in the area, the only thing I can see where people can really make a mark is the building of the economy. Yeah, where you start thinking of building facilities in Ofu for the tourists and Ta'u, and get employment over there and create some good airports, safety of people traveling, light up the runway so you can make night flights and continuously, like because that's the other area, is to beef up this transportation between the islands. I think if you look long term, it's a tourist that you're gonna, if you bring them in and really tailor them, not to disrupt the culture, but usually enjoy, they come in and see the culture in those islands, in Ofu in particular, in Ta'u. That's something that people can do. Yeah. There are now other services that new techs are bringing in, some other, but to me that's an area that we can develop. If you look back, I served from Governor Lee's first term continuously until Governor Lee's second term when he came back. And I served all the elected governors, went through elections. Some of them wanted me, there's supporters wants me out, but I was able to maintain my job continuously, so I'm still here, as they say. So it's a challenge. It's something that I always wave my hands and tell people when they question me, say, hey, have you done this? Because it's only, I don't know of anybody that's gone through this, be able to sustain this under pressure. The pressure of competitive politics. I don't really participate in this politics. I stay an independent course. Whoever becomes governor, I support the person. I work under that person. But the main thing is to do my job and do it the best I can. That's it. Thank you.
Leva-me pra lua, quero ficar entre as estrelas. Deixe-me voar em direção a este lugar. Dá-me tuas mãos, vem comigo. Vem me encontrar nesta viagem. Leva-me pra onde o amor exista de verdade, onde a felicidade só procure por nós dois. Em outras palavras, quero dizer que eu vou ficar com você. Leva-me pra lua, quero ficar entre as estrelas. Deixe-me voar em direção a este lugar. Dá-me tuas mãos, vem comigo. Vem me encontrar nesta viagem. Leva-me pra onde o amor exista de verdade, onde a felicidade só procure por nós dois. Em outras palavras, quero dizer que eu vou ficar com você. As palavras, quero dizer que eu vou ficar com você. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Leva-me pra onde o amor exista de verdade, onde a felicidade só procure por nós dois. Em outras palavras, quero dizer